For many years, wartime propaganda had masked the reality of a purported treasure train. In 2015, when radar scans were performed in a quiet Polish town, the world began to take an interest in one of the intriguing mysteries in history. Following reports of a Nazi treasure train discovered in Poland, there was a flurry of activity across the area, and the question remained: what was hidden by the Nazis as they faced their downfall? When further investigations took place, it was revealed that there was more beneath the Owl Mountains than had previously been imagined. Whatever waits below the surface has the potential to change history. But what exactly did radar scans reveal, hidden deep beneath the Owl Mountains? And why did experts suddenly go silent afterward? A train that vanished into the mountains. In the last months of World War II, Nazi Germany felt the strain against its borders from advancing Soviet forces, something that would capture the imagination of history, and even to this day, happened within the railway system in Lower Silesia. A heavily armored train purportedly carrying large amounts of gold and precious stones, invaluable artwork, and even more sinister cargo disappeared between Brelau, as it is nowadays known, Rottweil, and Waldenburg, Walbersich. It just completely vanished, leaving behind only questions. To onlookers, it was an armored monster with unprecedented security that set it apart from other trains. Several eyewitness accounts, including the testimony from Gotthard Weltz, a 15-year-old Polish resident, placed this train traveling west in the dead of night in January 1945, just before the Red Army had closed in. Then, in an instant, the train vanished. Its sudden disappearance immediately fueled speculation regarding the actual cargo aboard this heavily guarded transport. Years of searching for the evidence of the Nazi gold train finally came to naught. While the well-documented history of Nazi atrocities made such a train's existence highly plausible, all that remained were some eyewitness testimonies, and the tale gradually turned into an urban legend. Rumors of hidden Nazi plunder in secret underground bunkers were not new. But this story carried unusual significance. The Nazis were famed for building extensive tunnel, bunker, and escape route systems throughout Europe. In this case, the suspected hideaway was close to Kassel, one of Hitler's planned headquarters, which contained the extensive but incomplete Project Reese tunnel system. These tunnels, dug deep into the Owl Mountains by forced labor, were abandoned in haste as Soviet forces approached. Many entrances were deliberately sealed with explosives. Of course, if a train did actually pull into one of these underground platforms, there is every possibility it might have been entombed forever. As time went on, various maps appeared that seemed to depict sightings along spurs of the main Ratibor-Kamienna railway. Others showed incompletely documented but distinctly recognizable tunnel entrances. One retired miner, Tadeusz Szwilkowski, was convinced that the train lay exactly where amateur explorers Piotr Koper and Andreas Richter would later claim to have found it. Based on information given to him years earlier by a German railway official, he claimed the Nazi gold train had entered a tunnel and never left. Whispers, maps, and rumors persisted through generations. So did the conviction. The Nazi gold train turned into a kind of local folklore, buried under the soil of Lower Silesia with nearly a decade of dust and denial. For many people, this wasn't simply a story about stolen riches. Rather, it was an allegory for the dying days of the Third Reich. A last-ditch attempt to hide the extent of its atrocities, the horrors with which it had sown the world. It was a train carrying more than just treasure. It carried ghosts of a dying regime. The haunting legacy would come up again in 2015. But what if that haunting legacy wasn't just a myth? What if someone finally uncovered proof buried deep beneath Poland's soil? The 2015 discovery that shook the world. In the summer of 2015, a remarkable announcement emerged from Poland that electrified the world. Two amateur explorers, Piotr Koper, a Polish building contractor, and Andreas Richter, a German geologist, claimed they had finally discovered what they sought. After decades of dead ends, speculation, and hoaxes, they presented what they described as concrete evidence. Images from the ground-penetrating radar showed the unmistakable outline of a 100-meter-long train buried under a railway embankment at approximately the 65-kilometer marker of the Wrocław-Walbers line. Their attorney issued a carefully crafted statement. The couple indicated that they would provide the exact location to the government, but only for a 10% finder's fee. The secrecy around the find, the timing, and the confidence with which they spoke sent the media global attention. However, skepticism emerged. The men appeared eager to profit from artifacts belonging to a regime the world would forever despise. Nevertheless, the search for the Nazi gold train had never yielded any substantial evidence. This discovery represented the closest anyone had ever come to determining its authenticity. Within days, Polish authorities sealed off the site. Armed guards, police officers, and military engineers swarmed the area. The Polish deputy culture minister, Piotr Żuchowski, publicly declared he was 99% certain that the radar images depicted a train, not a geological formation or a hoax. News organizations from around the world converged in Walbrzych. Spectators, treasure hunters, and skeptics gathered near the forested site, where a stretch of rail curved toward a suspiciously elevated embankment. Television crews established camps in the woods. The excitement was palpable. For the first time, the legendary Nazi gold train felt tangible and real. A piece of history was about to be unearthed and possibly expose additional Nazi atrocities. For nearly 7 decades, the train had remained a myth, but it was about to become reality. Koper and Richter revealed that the radar scans had been conducted using a KS-700 system, which indicated a long metallic rectangular object buried approximately 50 meters below the surface. It was the perfect location, corresponding to older maps, witness accounts, and theories. Some onlookers even claimed to have spotted ventilation shafts, a sealed tunnel entrance, and evidence of a secondary chamber nearby. It was easy to see why the Polish deputy culture minister had spoken with such conviction that the long-lost train had finally been found. It all lined up amazingly well. But it wasn't just treasure that captured the public's imagination. Speculation mounted about what else could be on board. Weapons, advanced Nazi technology, and even nuclear research facilities were mentioned. Theories started to spiral, and the mystery deepened as the military swept the area clean of mines and traps left behind from the war. Once the Polish army finished its sweep, excavation permits were issued. Scientific teams began scanning, measuring, and drilling. Public interest reached a fever pitch. For the first time in many years, new evidence was about to emerge in the story. Everything that the world thought it knew about the Nazis could potentially change in an instant. The discovery, or the illusion of one, transformed Vršac overnight. The town's tourism numbers soared. The Nazi gold train was in headlines again, and this time it would not go away. But precisely what had the Nazis left behind? Was it nothing more than the desperation of a regime in collapse, looking to cover its tracks by concealing all its art and jewelry? Or was it something much more sinister? What the Nazis left behind? Although the concept of a treasure-filled train may sound fantastic, historical records paint a very different picture. Aside from conventional battles, the Nazi regime carried out a systematic plunder across Europe on an unprecedented scale. Priceless artwork, currency, jewelry, religious artifacts, and entire museum collections were the spoils taken from cities across the continent. What was inside the so-called Nazi gold train would be much more than a few things belonging to the Nazis. It would exemplify the gathered wealth stolen from persecuted communities through years of relentless persecution. History itself justifies such claims. In May 1945, as Germany fell, American forces found a train full of looted art treasures within Hitler's retreat at Berchtesgaden. This incident was far from isolated. Allied forces went on to recover approximately 5 million looted items, with over 4 million confirmed cases of theft or extortion. Yet large parts of such treasures remain lost to history. Of all the missing treasures, there's one that is among the most baffling, and that is the Amber Room, which was stolen from the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg. It vanished after being dismantled and moved to Königsberg during the war. Some historians believe it was destroyed during an air raid, while others maintain it was loaded onto a train. The very same train now suspected to lie buried beneath the Owl Mountains. One of the most notorious art thieves in modern times was Hermann Göring, Hitler's second in command. He even boasted about his systematic looting campaigns and amassed enough masterpieces for several museums. Hitler himself wanted to open a super museum in Linz, Austria, where his private collection included many rare pieces stolen from Jewish collectors, galleries, and universities. There is, in fact, strong precedent for the very existence of gold trains. In 1945, a train was intercepted by U.S. forces in Austria, filled with huge amounts of gold, silver, and artwork that had been stolen from Hungarian Jews. The cargo included 52 boxes of gold and diamonds, over 1,500 boxes of silver, and even the reserves of an entire national bank. Much of this treasure mysteriously disappeared after falling into American hands. Rather than preserve and return it to the owners, disturbing parallels emerged with Nazi practices. When stories of a buried Nazi train surfaced in 2015, they weren't entirely based on unfounded rumors. The Nazis had motive and means. They did build elaborate underground bunkers and tunnel networks in which to hide their stolen wealth from advancing Allied forces. These weren't just rumors, these were documented strategies. Could one of those trains have simply disappeared into the mountains, sealed in behind a wall of explosives and decades of silence? Why else would an operation like Project Reese be initiated if it wasn't to move stolen goods in secrecy? But what if those stolen riches were never lost at all, only hidden beneath our feet, waiting to be unearthed by chance? Beneath the Owl Mountains, Project Reese. In unraveling how a train might disappear, one would have to know what lay beneath the surface. Project Reese, German for giant, was an enormous building activity started by the Nazis in the year 1943 in the Owl Mountains. This was one of the most ambitious projects envisioned by Hitler, an enormous underground complex designed to house the Führer's command center and relocate key industrial operations underground, safe from Allied bombing raids. The tunnel systems were comprehensive, inhumane, and unfinished, built using forced labor from concentration camps. Many of the workers died in the process, part of what Nazi officials called annihilation through labor. Their bodies became as replaceable as machine parts. The vast number of prisoners of war and concentration camp prisoners meant they were never short of a continuous supply of workers as and when they needed them. Even today, the full extent of Project Reese is not known. Only part of the complex has been mapped and/or made accessible. Immense shafts, multi-level tunnels, and colossal chambers exist throughout the mountains. And then there are the sealed doors, blasted entrances, and tunnels blocked with rubble that no one dares to clear. Undoubtedly, there are secrets within the Owl Mountains that the world may never know about, making it the ideal location for the Nazi gold train. Experts believe these unfinished tunnels were capable of hiding entire trains. Satellite imagery and wartime maps indicate several intriguing alignments between known tunnel systems and nearby rail lines. The geophysicist Kristofsky, who had studied that region for decades, found several anomalies: caves, shafts, and air vents. Why would the Nazis need such colossal subterranean spaces? Some say they were relocating weapons factories. Others believe they were working on new armaments, long-range missiles, jet fighters, and even the components of a nuclear program. One site, the Osovka complex, consists of a large fortified underground space with rail access. Close by is Castle, which was also being retrofitted into a Nazi headquarters. A tunnel is believed to connect the castle directly to the railway line. Could that have been the final destination of the Nazi gold train? There's one more clue: the use of Hitler's personal train, the Führersonderzug. This mobile headquarters usually worked from hidden locations throughout Europe. Was the area of Wałbrzych ever a center of such operations? It's not confirmed, but what is known is that the Nazis invested heavily in concrete, manpower, and secrecy into these mountains, then left in a hurry, destroying documentation and sealing off access, which begs the question: what were they hiding? Too many clues to dismiss. There has been accumulating evidence over the decades to the point that it can no longer be dismissed. Many eyewitnesses independently report strange train activity in the early months of 1945. Residents, miners, and railway staff uniformly expressed that they saw a heavily guarded train heading west before it suddenly vanished. Tadas Suvikauskas, a retired miner, became so thoroughly convinced of the train's location that he devoted decades to meticulous research of topographical maps and witness testimonies. His theoretical conclusions precisely aligned with subsequent findings from Koper and Richter's scanning operations. When investigators finally conducted a comprehensive examination of the site in 2015, radar technology detected not merely a substantial metallic presence, but rather distinct man-made geometric patterns beneath the Earth's surface, suggesting either railroad cars or enclosed compartments. Follow-up scanning revealed multiple cavities within the rock formations. Could this constitute evidence of a concealed tunnel system? Nevertheless, skepticism persisted. Professor Janusz Miedzewicz, heading a research team from the Croft Mining Academy, maintained that the observed anomalies possessed natural origins. RTOR and Koper publicly and repeatedly challenged this assessment. Their scanning data underwent independent analysis by separate experts who noted pronounced electromagnetic field readings in the same geographical area. As one continues to analyze this case, the converging evidence becomes increasingly difficult to shrug off. Radar images, historical records, eyewitness accounts, and evidence of Nazi-built structures make for a disturbing odyssey. Even satellite imagery revealed questionable ground anomalies at specific locations on a German wartime map. And then, there is the supposed deathbed confession that backed Koper and Richter's research. While unsubstantiated, the confession was from a former SS officer who reportedly said he had knowledge of the location of a train that had been closed off in a tunnel not far from Walbersig. This confession provided evidence that legitimatized the abounding evidence, but also allowed for the possibility that the Nazi gold train was delivering something far darker than paintings and jewels. More and more evidence led to more insights, and each individual piece of evidence didn't hold the same weight alone, but together they form a story that seems impossible to shake off. What if it wasn't just gold? But what if what lay sealed inside that tunnel wasn't treasure at all, but something the Nazis never meant anyone to find? The legend of the Nazi gold train has long centered on treasure hoards. Gold bars, precious jewels, and invaluable artworks formed its supposed contents. However, as fresh evidence emerged, some began questioning whether the truth might be even more sinister. It stands to reason that the goods within the train were stolen from people whom the Nazis persecuted. Jews, Roma, academics, gay individuals, disabled persons, and numerous other targeted groups fell victim to their brutality. This revelation alone proves shocking enough. The train wasn't merely an attempt to conceal Nazi treasures, it was hiding treasures that never belonged to them in the first place. However, there is an example within the regime that indicates the Nazi gold train may be involved with something far more significant than the simple hoarding of wealth. Theories have persisted that the cargo may have included items confiscated from Holocaust victims. Clothing, suitcases, gold dental fillings, wedding bands, and even teeth extracted from deceased victims were anything but casual in their documentation and were stolen from individuals in concentration camps. The Nazis were remarkably effective and methodical in capitalizing on human lives. By 1945, many death camps were being evacuated hastily. Contemporary eyewitnesses described military convoys transporting not just valuables, but unusual freight. Wooden crates, body-sized containers, and sealed wagons escorted by SS units. If the Nazi gold train was among these convoys, it's possible it contained evidence of crimes the regime desperately sought to hide, evidence that needed permanent burial. Then there's the theory regarding scientific or military secrets. Toward war's end, German scientists worked feverishly to develop advanced weapons and nuclear technology. Project Reese and surrounding complexes in the Owl Mountains have long been suspected of housing components of these programs. Some speculate that the train may have carried radioactive materials, experimental machinery, or documentation related to weapons research. When Soviet forces moved in, they conducted thorough, though largely undocumented, searches of these tunnels. Reports later surfaced indicating Russian scientists removed crates from the region under armed guard. Their contents remain classified. In this version, the Nazi gold train was more than a treasure trove. It was a mobile vault of horror, a repository of everything the Third Reich hoped to keep from Allied hands. Some investigators even theorized the train was never intended for discovery. It wasn't just hidden, it was deliberately buried along with whatever secrets it carried, not to protect wealth from the enemy, but to prevent anyone from discovering the horrors the Nazi regime conducted. And if that theory proves true, then, worse than we thought, barely scratches the surface of what that train really is. But will we ever learn what the Nazis desperately tried to hide under the earth? The final twist: tourism, money, and the real treasure. By the fall of 2016, Walbrzych had become something very different, no longer overshadowed by the Second World War, but instead at the center of one of its most intriguing mysteries. Hotels were fully booked as coaches packed with tourists arrived. Local restaurants renamed dishes on their menus after the fabled gold train. Souvenirs flew off shop shelves faster than ever before, turning myth into big business. According to local authorities, media interest in the story was already worth hundreds of millions in promotional value. The gold train has already arrived, one official conceded, even if treasure hunters found something other than that. In 2019, the Polish explorer Piotr Koper was renovating a palace near Rusau and stumbled upon invaluable 16th century murals behind a false wall. Not gold, but this revelation was important. Poland still held plenty of secrets beneath its surface. Many mountain tunnels were still unexplored, sealed either by the Nazi demolition teams or by the Soviet forces or Polish authorities. Some of them had been deliberately flooded to prevent looting or trespassing. Their complete contents remained shrouded in mystery, and investigators continued to formulate theories. Some speculated the train had been relocated deeper underground into the Reese Tunnel complex, while others maintained it remained precisely where radar scans indicated, waiting mere meters too deep for excavation attempts to uncover. This was able to remain a mystery since it fit so well into the gaps of history. The chaotic last days of war, plundering at an industrial scale, missing treasures, incomplete tunnels, and convoy stories that could not be verified. Even after all these years, the mystery still refuses to die. What truly lies sealed beneath the Owl Mountains? Gold, secrets, or something far darker? Could the Nazi gold train still be waiting for the right hands to uncover it? Or has it already been found, hidden again under silence and profit? One thing is certain. History never stays buried forever. The deeper we dig, the closer we get to answers someone never wanted us to find. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.